I read Kagurabachi, and it was peak. The story, the art, the fights, the characters, everything so far has been incredibly well crafted, and I'm truly excited to see what Hokuzono has cooking for the rest of the story. So today, I figured I'd talk about my experience with reading Kagurabachi. For a little context, I actually did start reading Kagurabachi when it first came out. At the time, everyone was memeing on the series, pretending like they had been fans since day one and saying that the series was a childhood classic. In this hype, I started reading casually, just sort of reading each chapter week to week without taking things too seriously, and I got up to around the Rakuzaichi arc before I got disinterested and dropped the series. Eventually, I tried picking it up again right from where I left off and finished the Rakuzaichi arc before dropping it again because I just got bored. But I made a post and a ton of you guys suggested that I read it, so I gave it a go, this time starting from chapter 1 and reading all the way through to chapter 82, and here are my thoughts. The first chapters are, at least in my opinion, not necessarily the most interesting, but they do a good enough job at introducing characters, setting the plot, tone, and mood of the story, and giving us a chance to look into what might happen. I'll be honest and say that I wasn't actually that invested in the story until the Sword Bearer Extermination arc. Sojo's fight was cool, but I didn't care much at the time, and the Rakuzaichi began to give me a little spark, but that spark didn't really ignite until we got to the Sword Bearer Extermination arc and things really picked up. The plot starts off as a relatively simple revenge story, and I share the sentiment that Chihiro can be a little cheesy whenever he talks about waking up with fresh hatred every day. However, there are a few things I do enjoy about Chihiro that set him apart from the usual shonen protagonist. For one, he isn't entirely altruistic, with some set of moral principles that makes him as good as he could possibly be. He's a killer from the very start and isn't really bothered by it, which definitely sets him apart from people like Yuji and Shin, since they're almost entirely good and have to be pushed before entering more violent states. Additionally, relative to the rest of the verse, I feel like Chihiro starts off much more powerful compared to other protagonists. He's definitely more of a prodigy type of character with a knack for learning on the fly, compared to other characters that either explicitly go through training arcs or aren't portrayed as being as smart from the jump. These two factors combined with Hokuzono's art always makes Chihiro look really cool when he has to lock in, and makes me enjoy Chihiro's presence throughout the story. As for the other characters, I'll talk about some of my favorites in a little bit, but first I'll have to cover the other aspects of the story. The plotline of Chihiro hunting down the Hishaku for killing his father is simple, but Hokuzono gradually adds complexity to it as the nature of the sword bearers, the enchanted blades, and their use in the war is eventually revealed to us. It isn't the most groundbreaking thing in literature for the person that's widely regarded as a hero to actually have a much darker story, but I like that it isn't as simple as Chihiro's dad was actually a supervillain. Instead, there's a legitimate moral dilemma regarding the Swordmaster, the Shinuichi, and the Malediction, and I can understand the side of both the Kamunabi and the side of the Hishaku without the story devolving into a simple government is bad because they hide things kind of story. Moreover, I like the plot progression as well. Things that are initially established early on, like Sojo's Danseki weapon, are used later, and it's quite nice to see the original Hishaku members shown in the flashback to eventually appear in the main story. We've seen 2 out of the 3, and I'm excited to see what the third one can do. As for the fights, Kagurabachi is fire. Obviously, I really enjoy the Sojo fight, and later things like literally any of Samura's fights, Azami's first real showings, and anytime Shiba decides to fight are drawn masterfully. Hokuzono has an incredible sense of scale and frequently draws panels with unique perspectives and complex backgrounds that just make them pop. I'd liken Kagurabachi as a middle ground between Sakamoto Days and JJK. The art, I'd say, is definitely rougher than the earlier Sakamoto Days stuff, but it's less messy than JJK. There are frequently panels that rival the double spreads of Sakamoto Days, but there are also a lot of extended sequences of action that look a lot like certain JJK panels with characters throwing hands. And for a series to look like another definitely isn't a bad thing. If anything, I'd argue that Kagurabachi almost has the best of both worlds with the way it approaches its art, combining the clean, flare-heavy double spreads of Sakamoto Days with the more in-the-weeds combat approach of JJK. Every panel has been a pleasure to look at, and Hokuzono has even remained consistent with the art style. Usually, you'll see a weekly series evolve its art style by the time it hits 80 chapters in, but Hokuzono is remarkably consistent, delivering fire page after fire page, week after week. Another aspect of the fights is the power system. The whole spirit energy thing definitely isn't the most inspired, but I do think it serves its purpose well. The enchanted blades are all incredibly interesting, and I love the unique abilities we see from them, along with their ability to be infinitely malleable depending on the wielder. It just opens up so many possibilities for how fights play out, and incorporating a character's mindset into how their weapon functions is such a cool idea. We see it occur in JJK when characters have a mindset shift and unlock a new tier of power, and I'm glad to see that here in Kagurabachi as well. One thing I would like to see more of is regular sorcery though. We've definitely seen instances of it with things like the Storehouse, Iso, Shiba's teleportation, and the Hishaku guy's tree roots, but I just want to see more. The story is still pretty early on, so I'm sure we will eventually see that, but seeing something like how Shiba cemented himself as the pinnacle of sorcery, or how Azami utilizes sorcery with his brute force fighting style would be really cool. Again, I'm sure we'll get these, I'm just expressing my hopes. Now, let me shut down my brain and talk about some of the characters that I really like, along with the hype and aura of the series. Also, at least as of right now, I don't have any characters that I particularly dislike. Even if I don't like them, they're relatively inoffensive, so I'm more indifferent to people like Yura or Kugiri rather than actively disliking them. Now, Samura. Samura is him. I absolutely love this guy. At first, it was purely just for the hype and aura that he brought to the series. As a blind swordsman, while it is kind of a trope in fiction, it is definitely one of the cooler ones, and Hokuzono does it so well. All the glazing he got at the temple when the Hishaku pulled up had my expectations set high, and even then, I was in awe after seeing what he could do with just a regular sword. Then, just as we start to see him struggle, he gets Tobimune and just blows my expectations out of the water again. And then, he betrays Chihiro and Uruha, leading me to another reason that I like him, which is his complexity. Samura isn't just an aura farming menace, he's a father with a legitimate love for his daughter and the conviction to ensure that she has a future. I'll probably make a more in-depth video just on Samura, but for now, I'll just say that I really enjoyed seeing his side of things when it comes to the malediction and his mission to kill the sword bearers. I see where he's coming from and I respect him for it, but also, he's just so cool. His entrance after N10 and Kumiyuri are drawn, his use of Suzaku, and now his duel with Chihiro all have so much aura, just adding to the reasons that I love Samura. Hirohiko. I think some people think he's like a fraud or something because he keeps losing, but honestly, I kinda love him. He's like Mahito with his constant risk-taking that leads to a rapid growth in strength, and I really like that mentality. Hirohiko is the embodiment of that for the series and has led to some incredible scenes. I have high hopes for his rivalry with Chihiro, and I hope Hokuzono continues to show us how fast he can learn before him and Chihiro eventually fight. Shiba and Azami. I'm lumping these two together because they sort of fulfill that archetype of really strong mentor figure. They're both referred to by Sojo as elite fighters, and both have had separate statements saying that they're a tier above even the most powerful sorcerers. Shiba is literally stated to be the pinnacle of sorcery, and Azami has been implied to be relative to him, which just makes them interesting to me. Shiba has a pretty funny dynamic with Chihiro, and Azami is a real one for siding with our main character, but he hasn't gotten very many scenes. But with how they're portrayed, Hokuzono has done a great job making me want to see more of them, and so I love them. So overall, reading Kagurabachi has been great. The story, while simple, is deeply captivating with a lively world, rich characters, and action that rivals some of the best battle shonen of recent memory. With a series this solid, I definitely plan to keep reading and drop some more videos on it, so stay tuned for that.